Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition.
It's as well a shift towards a world without rules.
Global problems will not be solved by one power calling the shots.
In late 2025, the United States revived a directive policy that many thought had been relegated to history, the Monroe Doctrine. This wasn't just a ceremonial nod to the 19th century, however. In early January 2026, U.S. President Donald Trump claimed that under his leadership, the so-called Donroe Doctrine had superseded its predecessor, and the updated doctrine has since emerged as an operating principle for modern U.S. statecraft and an American version of a new world order revolving around three strategies: exclude competition, coerce and bully targets into some sort of surrender, and maintain geopolitical control. Two cases framed this shift with brutal clarity. First, Venezuela. On January 3, 2026, U.S. Operation Absolute Resolve culminated in the abduction of a sitting head of state. Then came Greenland. Once a space defined by shared defense and alliance among members of NATO, the North Atlantic has become a contested terrain.
I'm not talking about money for Greenland yet. I might talk about that. But right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not.
The Trump administration rapidly escalated its intent to acquire Greenland, starting from a transactional proposal in 2025, with the U.S. president casually talking about wanting to buy the island, to language implying coercive annexation as a strategic necessity.
By the way, I will say this about Greenland. We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
The justification isn't ideological. It's entirely geopolitical. The goal is to deny Chinese and Russian influence over North American defense and secure access to critical minerals. The result? Unprecedented tension within NATO, with U.S. pressure directed not at an adversary, but at the legal order of an allied system. Venezuela and Greenland have thus served as early manifestations of the revived doctrine, one that normalizes unilateral U.S. action in the Western Hemisphere and indicates that alliance commitments may be subordinated to territorial objectives. The original Monroe Doctrine of 1823 was a warning to Europe against new colonial ambitions. It wasn't about universal sovereignty. It was about drawing a line in the sand. In 1904, the Roosevelt Corollary expanded the doctrine, justifying U.S. police power in Latin America to maintain order and prevent European intervention. But the Donroe Doctrine is different. It shifts the focus from opposing colonization of the Western Hemisphere to opposing the presence of Washington's rivals there altogether. It no longer serves as a mere diplomatic warning, but rather as an operational framework. The Trump administration's strategic language framed this revival as the Trump Corollary, a pledge to reassert and enforce Washington's dominance over the Western Hemisphere after years of inaction, and to deny non-Western powers the ability to position forces or control strategically vital assets there, be they deep-water ports, energy systems, airports, telecom networks, or mineral extraction sites. This is not merely the readoption of a 19th century American vision. It was Washington's modernization of a rusty sphere of influence strategy. Formal sovereignty has become recognized in theory, but it has become conditional in practice, limited by a requirement that neighboring states not become platforms for rival powers. Venezuela became the sharpest demonstration of Washington's emboldened coercive enforcement. The updated U.S. policy also revealed a classic pattern of hemispheric hierarchy, with global political outcomes linked to resource control. After seizing Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, the Trump administration indicated that the United States would run Venezuela during a transition period, and that it would control the country's oil industry. This marked a return to an extraction-oriented approach to hemispheric relations. It also carried a strategic implication. Venezuelan energy would be redirected towards U.S. national security, rather than serving China's industrial growth. The U.S. approach to Panama revealed a different focus. as China expanded its economic presence across Central America through loans and projects related to construction, ports, and telecommunications. Washington interpreted these projects through a security lens. The break in Panama's ties with U.S. ally Taiwan and its establishment of relations with Beijing in 2017 became an early signal of China's expanding diplomatic position. The Trump administration's response included unusually strong measures, including recalling top diplomats from Panama and issuing warnings. Within this framework, the Panama Canal region was treated less as a neutral conduit of global trade and more as a strategic artery, whose surrounding infrastructure must not be controlled by a U.S. rival. Chinese investments in the Western Hemisphere were recast as security threats by default. States in Latin America and the wider hemisphere face increased pressure to choose sides or to accept penalties for maintaining economic ties with U.S. rivals, recalling a famous line from former U.S. President George W. Bush, who called on the world to choose sides back in 2001.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
Greenland has condensed the doctrine's modern logic into a territorial question. The strategic rationale is explicit. Greenland's location matters for North American defense architecture, and its mineral resources matter for industrial competition, particularly because rare earth minerals have become central to advanced technology supply chains. Chinese interest in Greenlandic infrastructure and mining projects had already raised alarm in Washington. The revived doctrine is now also colliding with the once impenetrable NATO alliance. A U.S. sphere of influence strategy, once aimed outward, has begun producing pressure within the West itself. The neo-Monroe approach isn't confined to the Americas. It has altered the grammar of international politics by normalizing spheres of influence as a legitimate organizing principle. For decades, Washington's use of force was often justified through the language of a rules-based international order, multilateralism, legal norms, institutions, and collective security.
İkinci Dünya Savaşı sonrasında kurulan küresel nizam kökten çatır diyor. Hukukun gücü yerine gücün hukukunun egemen olduğu bir yapıya doğru hızla ilerliyoruz. Yıllardır konforlu bir coğrafyada bulunmanın keyfini çıkaran ülkeler ilk defa hayatın gerçekleriyle yüzleşiyor.
The revived doctrine emphasizes a different foundation, maintaining Washington's regional dominance to ensure the U.S.'s global hegemony, strategically challenging global treaties like NATO, and aiming for sovereign control over critical assets. When a leading power like the U.S. overtly adopts an explicit sphere of influence policy, the legitimacy and validity of universal rules are undermined, making it difficult and even hypocritical to condemn breaches of international law committed by other states. Russia's near-abroad rhetoric and China's core interests framework might gain credibility in an environment where major powers openly police geographic perimeters and treat neighboring regions as extensions of their own territories under the guise of national security. The result is a drift towards a world of zones, concentrated areas of control, competing influence, and conditional sovereignty for smaller states.
It's as well a shift towards a world without rules, where international law is trampled underfoot, and where the only law that seems to matter is that of the strongest, and imperial ambitions are resurfacing, and conflicts continue in the Middle East and across Africa.
This generates a specific and unprecedented anxiety in Europe. It is not only Europe's fear of U.S. withdrawal from global leadership, but also fear of Washington's unilateral actions. Actions that disregard the cohesion of Western alliances. The reliability of previous commitments becomes uncertain, and uncertainty is corrosive in a security pact.
And I may do that for Greenland, too. I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security, so I may do that.
China, too, is framing the U.S.'s Monroe Doctrine 2.0 as hegemonic and destabilizing, arguing that it returns international politics to coercion and exclusion. Meanwhile, Russia benefits indirectly from alliance strain and the erosion of common norms. even when it is profiting less than China. The neo-Monroe era thus shifts not only U.S. behavior, but also shakes alliances across the region. While the Monroe Doctrine began as a declaration of the U.S.'s influence and boundaries, it evolved into a rationale for intervention. In its revived Donroe form, it has become architecture, a system through which the U.S. treats the Western Hemisphere less as a collection of equal sovereign states and more as a strategic perimeter to be fenced in and controlled.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons.
The central feature is not a revisiting of 19th century diplomacy. It is a contemporary logic of domination, preventing U.S. rivals from controlling resources, disciplining political alignments that Washington disapproves, to justify unilateral U.S. action while disregarding institutional legitimacy. It reduces the authority of universal rules and laws and allows the most influential states to consolidate power and gain a dangerous amount of economic leverage. It weakens the meaning of sovereign equality and strengthens the meaning of proximity to power. In such a context, the defining question is no longer whether a doctrine such as Monroe can be justified. The defining question is what kind of international system it produces. A system in which security is purchased through submission and autonomy is treated as negotiable. Welcome to the New World Order, Monroe 2.0.